I think when we first jumped on, you were saying how you're in the middle of nowhere. Where are you?
I small little town in Washington. It's really like for me. Okay, so for me as a British person, I did like I did a few little house tours and whatever, and there's suburbia and there's whatever, and I'm just outside of Seattle. But when I came into this one, it was like pure Americana. Like it's almost that 1950s Back to the Future town now. Like they didn't really change the high street or anything. So like they'll have some sort of event that goes on and they'll be putting like bunting across the main street still. There's still like a Shell gas station from the 50s with a little guy that wants to pump it for you. It's incredible. So as a as a foreigner, this is like exactly where I imagined ending up. It's been great.
You're still getting that not self-serve. What is it called? The full service at the gas station?
I mean, if you want it, I think they're keeping it as a novelty because it might even be like a historic landmark now for the town. But it's just so cute seeing them do all of these like little small town center events, and they have like a local theater that they put on local productions of Grease or local productions of like Hairspray and stuff, and it'll be everybody from the town is in it. Like you probably know somebody that's in it because the town is so small.
Did you like intentionally pick that town because it reminded you of back home or because it had a Harry
Oh,
Potter vibe?
it be more opposite than back home. Like I was living in Brighton when I moved, and that's like a little seaside British town.
Mhm.
Um, very sort of like 1970s, let's go to the seaside for a holiday vibe, like a nice parasol and a deck chair sitting on the pier in the little sun that we get. When I came out here, I just didn't know towns like this still existed. So when I traveled through it for a house viewing, I wrote I'm very like um I want to write myself like little notes to hope to encourage some sort of future. So when I went and toured this house, I wrote a little note in my phone saying, "You will get approved for this house, and they will let you live here, and this is the one for you." And I think by sort of projecting that, something came together and then put me in this space, and I was able to get it. But yeah, I didn't know towns like this were still going, and the fact that this one's strong and still like everybody wants to come out here. Like Seattle's fine, but if you're an artist and you want to
Mhm.
have some hikes and some nature inspiration, this is like kind of the place.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you said something there that I want to come back to, which was like the writing the note, the manifesting, the
Yeah.
intentionality. Let me ask first, like, why Seattle? I mean, I am 45 and I grew up on so much music and obviously, especially grunge and alternative. So for me, coming to the West Coast and being by Seattle was so much fun because there's Nirvana and all that stuff. But like, you're coming from much farther away. How did you pick this spot?
I grew up on that grunge scene, like Nirvana was being played throughout my house, like all through my childhood. I think I just stole my sister's CDs as well when I was growing up. Especially and a weird choice, but the MTV Unplugged album. I don't know how
Mm.
many times I ran that album through because like everything's so nice and crystal clear, and Dave's drumming is so subdued compared to the other stuff. But I came out here with music first, and I remember we slept in our van in the parking lot below the Space Needle for 2 days because we were waiting for the tour to like catch back up to us. Um, and I loved it. I loved the grunginess. I loved being able to walk around and experience all of the similar sort of weather patterns and similar sort of attitudes that people had very close to the UK. I mean, I
Mhm.
think Vancouver's also a little bit like that in that the weather keeps people in a certain mentality. There's not as much flamboyancy of fun because the sun isn't there to be in that mode all year round. So we kind of get our seasonal different changes through our attitudes, and it just felt so familiar. I really really loved Seattle, and a friend of mine opened a studio out here that I'd worked with previously, and he was starting to look for artists. I mean, how deep do you want to go for my reasoning of coming out?
That's good. I'm sure we'll talk about like, the studio and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
you mentioned weather. Kurt even has a line, right? Weather changes moods. When I moved from Toronto to Vancouver, I felt like all of a sudden I was vibrating on the frequency that I was supposed to. And I just felt so at home, surrounded by the mountains and the ocean, like saltwater versus freshwater. It was a whole different ball game. And I don't know. I feel right being on the West Coast.
I couldn't agree more. There, you're right. There is a frequency. I think there's something about the mountain ridge line that runs all the way across that kind of keeps things in this nice little pocket here. And every time I've been out to Toronto, and I've worked there quite a few times, it's lovely and the best people, and everybody's so lovely. But the brutalist architecture of Toronto sometimes gets me down a little. There's a lot of grey concrete in that town.
Amen. So, Owen Paul's tattoo artist, painter, musician, originally
Oh, stop,
from,
stop, stop. But name some more things. Continue. Yeah.
that's all I got. As far as porn
Um,
star,
yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. Moonchild.
that's the note that Douglas just gave me, so that's all I have. Seriously though, like, you grew up in England, talk to me about, like, growing up, what was, little Owen's life like? Did you have a big family, small family? I wanna go through the trajectory of how
Okay.
you fell into music and then through that into art, obviously.
I can shape you the map of it all. I came from like quite a small family. Like we certainly weren't well off. Me, my sister, my mum. And my mum was always the first person to encourage the arts in our house. Like one of my earliest memories is sitting on the countertop as probably 4 or 5 years old and having my mum ask me what instruments I could list from listening to the radio whilst the classical radio or whatever jazz station we had on was, and going through the different instruments and her educating me because she was a singer primarily before she had me and my sister, and then was able to translate that into being quite a successful choir teacher around the UK in her later years. But I always came from that sort of household where the arts and creativity was celebrated way above any sort of sciences or mathematics, and that's lucky for me because I'm not that way inclined. Like my brain doesn't those things, but there's something about art and there's something about music and being a creative and creating a one of one that really drives me. So I think that was instilled probably from her and into my sister as well, who's also a massive creative in London. And then I suppose through that and love of music, it was the same as a lot of people's story. You start playing in school as a little band together, you leave that band, join another band, you become sort of known for playing that instrument within your hometown. And then I got lucky to meet up with a really good group of lads that ended up literally changing my life and taking me all over the world.
Yeah, I got a bunch of those notes in front of me. I actually spoke with a drummer yesterday, Dave Nestor from, Enemy, and,
Uh,
there's this weird habit of drummers. Sorry, did you wanna say something?
no, I was just that's a nice interview for you to have. I'm going to check that out after this one and see what notes he has.
I'm sure they're both gonna be equally solid. The reason I brought it up is just that, drumming is so specific. It's a specific instrument and it's a specific skill to be able to like multitask multiple limbs and all these things together at the same time. But you, from what I understand, started with like brass and a trumpet. How did you like, graduate from that to
Okay,
something
so
more
it,
complex?
it, this is what the deal always was in my household was I will my mum said I will pay for drum lessons, but you're not allowed to quit brass. You have to do both. If you're gonna do drum lessons, you have to earn it by staying where you are with brass and doing your grades. So I was playing for I was only third or second chair. I wasn't right at the top of this, but I was playing for it's called the Hampshire County Brass Youth Band, and we would go and do concerts all over, and we would do concerts in the local towns and in our own sort of like hall that we had. But I think coming from a world where you weren't allowed to take the music home and practice at home, you were expected to show up and sight read everything. You were expected to be good enough at your instrument at like 12 or 13 to just be able to handle whatever's ever put in front of you. And that sort of pressure and that
Mm.
like that build to want to become first chair, it like seemed such a prestigious thing at the time. And I think my mum knew that that drive and that atmosphere was gonna like put me into good spaces, so she wanted me to keep that and not just do some drums for a bit and noodle around and then find like a normal office job. So I think she knew that if I stuck with both, it would give me a better mentality for later in life, which it did. But at the time, I hated it. I hated Fridays going to band practice, and the only reason I kept it up was the promise of a McDonald's after we finished the bra. It's always like, okay, now drive through. Come on, let's go.
So it was like classically trained, and then obviously also uh not guilted, what's the word? Like bribed into keeping going through the promise of McDonald's and future drums.
I don't. I mean, I'm vegan now, so I don't really want to promote that too heavily. But yeah, like I think any reward badge, he was like, okay, well, as long as he sticks with it, it's good. But it did teach me how to write and read music, and even now when I do drum parts, I'm sat in the studio before our studio day starts, just writing down on manuscript and trying to get as many parts down because that's easier for me to read than some sort of drum tab or something like that. But without that brass experience, I never would have been able to learn all that stuff.
So are you more self-taught when it comes to drums, or did you take
No,
on some of that classical?
I had drum teachers for sure. I think I
Okay.
got a head start in that if a drum teacher comes in and puts sheet music in front of me, at least I can read it. And also it's far easier with drums because you've essentially just got five things instead of guitar where might you might just guitar music to me looks like insanity on a page. And the same with piano. You look at that sheet music and it's just there's it's chaos. My brain can't put all that together in a quick enough mode. But drums being five things and very regimented, and the amount of sheet music that is just repeat, 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 repeat. Like I'm super into that for drums. And then I guess as soon as I started playing with bands, I was I mean from being a kid, you kind of shy away from the music side of stuff. But I definitely took lessons and worked hard on trying to polish that side of my musicianship.
That lesson of repetition obviously plays a huge role in what you're doing now, and the pitch that I got, like who you're known for online, et cetera, or not who you're known for, what you're known for is tattooing. But like I find it fascinating that you spent nearly 2 decades, if not longer, around music, and it formed so much of your bait before going into it. And as I was like, looking you up before the call, I was blown away by not just how much you've done with music, but, like, some of the things that you've done within, 2 different bands, and then Jameson, I believe that was one of the bands, and you were briefly on Drive Through Records, and that there were extensive tours with, notable acts such as Alkaline Trio, Rancid, Agent Orange.
And I
This wasn't just, like, drumming from the band, and now I'm gonna be a tattoo artist. This was like a full-fledged career beforehand.
Yeah, it was full on. Like we were full time for quite a while. I wouldn't ever say that we were making great money. We were rich out of it, but the experience of just getting to live like that for nearly a decade was insane. So we were pretty much living in our van full time. Occasionally we'd do
Mhm.
runs with did this short run where Bad Religion would give us their hotel rooms at the end of the day. So they just had shower rooms. They had enough money on that tour that they could go and shower during the day and then just leave the room and never come back to it because their drive they had a bus that they'd sleep on during the drives. And we got lucky enough to kind of be cheeky and worm our way into getting their key cards every day. And we would just stay at the Bad Religion hotel room. So there was sometimes we'd get out of the van and it was occasional, but we'd just love that. It wasn't on our budget, but if we could like somehow sort that out into our rider or sort that out with their management at the time. I don't even, I'm not even sure if they knew that we were doing that, because these rooms would be trashed by the time we, and so we just do a quick little clean up like British band boys would, and then sleep there. It was cool.
Good for you for having, just so much. What are some of the, I guess, highlights for you of your musical career? And I know the career continues now, and we'll talk about that. But like, when you look or reflect upon what you did during that time before your big pivot, were there any moments where you're like, yeah, man, this is awesome?
I'll tell you what was one of my favorites. Like I don't like necessarily highlighting stuff too much because the whole experience, it's like trying to pick a favorite song or trying to pick a favorite movie. It's like it changes. Like some days this will be my favorite experience or whatever, but one of the best ones that we had. So I'll tell you about how we started on that American music tour. It's called Warp Tour. We first went out there, we found out there was such a thing called the barbecue band. And that's essentially a band that gets to play on one of the smaller stages every day. In return for that, they don't get paid, but in return, they host the barbecue at all of the after parties in the parking lot every night for all the band and crew. They usually get tipped out pretty good. Um, but that's how they make their money. That's how they make their gas. So they've got two jobs. They've got one is playing 30, 40 minutes set on one of the smaller stages, and
Mhm,
another one is running this whole barbecue stuff. So we found out about this. We messaged Kevin, who was the owner, and said, hey, we would love a shot at getting to do this. Like, we think we could do this really well. And he said, well, I've worked with the same barbecue band for years now. They're awesome. It's not something I'm looking for, but I am looking for a band to help out in catering. Do you think you could handle that? So our job became making, I think the first one was 55 or 60 stage meals, custom ordered stage meals to hand deliver to the stage crew and stage hands on each individual stage throughout the day so that they didn't have to leave and come to catering. We came to them. And in return for
mhm.
that, band that dropped out on that tour, we could fill their spot. So it meant that we were in catering every day, in our punk gear, in our punk outfits, looking all punk rock, making sandwiches, making soups, making whatever they needed us to make. And we got on first name basis with every single stage manager on that whole tour. And every band that came through catering saw us working in there. And one of the bands, Bouncing Souls, saw how hard we were working, invited us onto their bus and told us, hey, we'd be more than happy to take off our instruments for one song in our set on the main stage every day, hand them to you, and you can come and play in the main stage every day. And that's what ended up happening. And we ended up playing to 30, 40,000 people, one song, no rehearsal, no warm up, run to the stage, grab their instruments, all their sizes of drums, like nothing set up for us, try our best, run the song, run back to catering, and keep working. And that's what we did for I think 3.5 months on that first run.
That's amazing, Owen. I couldn't have asked for a better story because you tied in like two really important things there that I'd love to expand on. You tied in the ability to just ask, take a chance, take a risk, right? You took a risk by reaching out saying, "Oh, we want to do this." And then you took the risk and got a reward, but you had to pivot because it wasn't what you were anticipating. So how much are for you taking risks and being able to pivot or go with the flow relevant or important to your career and to your trajectory so far?
I think you have to in this world as well because tattoos are a luxury. Tattoos and paintings for that matter are the first
Mm.
luxury stripped away when times get tough for people. So you have to be able to still create and still stay in that window regardless of the financial climates that you're facing. So there's definitely different parts of the world that I've traveled to where I do have to take a huge pay cut, but the experience of being there, like I'm thinking of Italy when I say this, but the energy and the frequency and the vibration of being there far counteracts the paycheck. So to be able to budget for that and almost just break even by going there, like that's a pivot in itself. And I understand the value of experiences versus the money side because sure we could all stay put and earn a decent amount of money and be little hometown heroes. But at the end of the day, I think when you're an old man, you want to reflect on a life full of experiences and taking chances and taking risks rather than I stayed home and accrued a bunch of money. Like, who cares? I'd much rather get out
Yeah.
there. And I think you're the same way, right? Like you've traveled so much and done so many things with your life. And I think you're the same as me that you couldn't imagine just having roots that deep without a secondary, tertiary plan going on in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I'm definitely always thinking about things. It's funny, I mentioned this in passing to my girlfriend a few days ago. I guess I was raised this way. When you sit down on the couch at the end of the day with a coffee or a wine or a pint, whatever it is, when you finally sit down, if you've busted your ass all day, it makes that sit down so much more rewarding. Anyone can wake up, do a few things, and then sit down. But when you're like, okay, well, we should do this. Oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to do anymore. Let's just keep going. Let's go and clean the garage now, whatever it is. That's how I am. I'm wired that way and I can't help but want to do things. And I really feel that on my tombstone, whenever that happens, I wanted to say, here lies Chris Gonda. He did all of this, not
Yeah,
here lies Chris Gonda.
exactly.
Here is some of the things he did. You know what I mean?
Dude, I said almost the exact same thing to somebody the other day, and I wasn't trying to like downplay my career or anything, but I said to them, I don't want it to read Owen Paul's tattooer. You know, I'd much rather say Owen Paul's creative. Owen Paul's he was a bit much. Like I'm fine. Like that would be fine for me. I'd be more than happy with that. Just anything that shows that I'm not just a one trick pony because life's too short for that. I want to experience. I'm a little bit of a brat. I'm a bit selfish. I want it all.
Yeah. I think you have to have that mindset. You have to have that doer, that goer, that don't stop. A friend of mine in Toronto in the industry as well, he's at Warner Canada. We used to just drink and fuck around, and he always would say, "Less slow, more go. Less slow,
Yeah,
more go." And that stuck with me. Like that,
yeah.
2 decades later, I'm still telling myself, "Less slow, more go." Like, what are you waiting for? Go, go, go. That doesn't mean you shouldn't like have a plan and reflect on things, but like inaction is so bad. You just have to go.
So I'm just looking at my hands, being like, well, is that not perfect for less slow, more go? Like knuckle tattoos? Like that would be the perfect thing.
Yeah, actually, if I get them, that probably makes the
There
most
you go.
sense. I'm gonna keep that in
Yeah,
mind.
lovely, like ornate sort of Edwardian looking lettering. Perfect. There you go, man.
Uh, well, tattoos. Speaking of which, so you've got this transition from music being such an important part of your life, if not your life, period, to then going into tattooing. But I think the bridge for me is this painting, right? So you're also an artist and you were doing stuff for bands, and somehow that led to tattooing. But like, where does painting factor into your life? I'm by no means a painter, but I have painted. I enjoy abstract. I've grown up around arts and painting in general. My dad collects. Um, how did you get into painting, and what was it for you that led then to tattooing?
I tried it when I was a little earlier on in my career, but didn't have really anyone around me in the UK that was super into it that I could kind of just steal little ideas and thoughts from or ask them about advice of painting. And it wasn't until I'd moved to LA and started working at like the studio I always like a dream studio that I never thought I'd get to go to. Everyone in there painted apart from me, and everyone else was amazing already as well. Like I walked into a studio of artists, not just tattoo artists. And it was the sort of place where every Thursday they'd have an instructor come in, everyone would sit together and learn and expand their knowledge. One week it would be charcoal, the next week it would be oil painting. There was an apprentice at the time that was one of the, in my opinion, one of the world's best portrait painters. And he was just there every day just to ask advice from and hang out with. And it got me very nervous that I couldn't meet up to that standard. So I think I don't like being bad at things and I don't like falling behind my peers or anything like that. So I think week one, I'd put myself back into art school again on both of my days off full time. So I was in 5 days a week and then 2 days at art school. It was called LAFA, so it wasn't one of the huge prestigious ones. It's called the LA Institute of Fine Arts. So I was able to just go in, book as many courses as I could, and these were like 2 to 3 week courses. And after one was completed, bang, straight on to the next one. So let's build up this knowledge. And every week, all my wages were spent on art supplies or DVDs or whatever. And I just really, really thought, you know what, like there's something about, not to get too like spiritual about anything, but there's really something about like a past life memory in my brain somewhere when I paint that tells me I've done this before, or tells me at least I've been some sort of storyteller creative before. And it comes really, really naturally. And I'm not bigging myself up in any way because I'm not where I want to be exactly with painting right now. But I think I've been able to grow as a painter since 2020, which is when I started taking painting lessons, quicker than most, because not only my job is studying pictures all day every day, but there's some sort
Mhm.
of weird frequency past life connection there that I can't quite explain, and it's just fulfilled a nice little chunk of my soul that was missing before.
So it just felt like a natural fit, and then that's allowed you to kind of grow with it quickly. Tell me a bit about like your drive, because we've already said this. You're a goer, and you wake up and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go to LA, then I'm gonna move to Seattle, and I'm gonna change my careers. And have you always been like this? Was it something that you were born with? Did you have to learn drive? Do you think it was your mom who was like, you got to finish
And
brass?
sent her, it was, yeah, it was her mentality of grasp every possible situation with the most positive outlook, and take every opportunity you can because you might not get another one. So I think that she lived with a little regret, honestly, that she had been encouraged to settle down a little too early for her without the exploration that she wanted to do. So I think for me and my sister, that drive of being like, no, go out into the world and get what you need to get. She was really keen that we didn't end up in a hole or end up in a dead end job that we hated. So even at my most broke times, and I've been in some sketchy situations, it was always, well, keep going because you don't know what's around the corner. And I think that mentality is like, that's everything. Like, that's the same with tattooing, you never know what's going to come up. I didn't think I'd be
Mhm.
out here. I thought I would just be doodling on people for money for the rest of my life. But people seem to like what I've done and are happy to have me at their studios out here. So, yeah, I've been really blessed.
It sounds like she really instilled in you the push to find the sense of purpose, like what it is that is your joie de vivre, so to speak.
That's a great words to use. We say it again.
Joie de vivre, your
What
your your
do
purpose
you?
of life, the joy of life. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, because
Um,
you're like you have a lot more French speakers up by you, well, growing up in Toronto or whatever. So this is great. I forget to hear these sort of accents from this region.
I mean, I'm like you. My parents raised me, forcing me to do a lot of things, knowing that it would benefit me in the long run. And so I did French immersion when I was in school, like not knowing that I was going to move to Europe at 14, and all of a sudden being in a country where I didn't speak the language at all. But because I
Mhm.
had a base in French, it allowed me to more easily start to pick up Czech. And then I was in high school, and they were offering Spanish classes, which were really similar to French, like at
But
least from foundational level. So I
yeah,
started to pick that up. And then because Europe, like we said before we started to record, is so close, you vacation in Spain, you go to France, you're able to practice and talk with other Europeans, and it just kind of builds a base. And because of that, I'm able to do so much more in my life. I think it's something I've talked about before where, like, I'm so grateful for my parents having forced me to do so many things because it taught me
yeah.
lessons later in life that I didn't appreciate at the time.
Even at even at the time, if it was irksome and it was you didn't want to be there, you want to be playing baseball or whatever. yeah, it means so much now to be able to converse with people from all over the world. Like I fully appreciate that. I can't help but be so thankful that the lessons I've learned throughout my life is coming from all different parts of the world. Like it's not just Western advice that I've been given, and it's seeing the experiences of my friends in Germany and France and Italy that have, yeah, it's just I'm so thankful for being able to do that.
So when you mentioned Los Angeles earlier and you said the studio, was that a tattoo studio? Was that you starting your apprenticeship as a tattoo artist?
No, no, this was so there's a whole thing with that, but in order to come out here, there's very specific rules of
Mm.
the work visa category. You have to prove unequivocally that you won't be taking an American's job and that you are a leader of your industry. So before I was able to even come out the first time, I had to do a lot of touring and a lot of evidence building to satisfy the US government that I was worthy of being here at all. So when I
Mhm.
moved out to California, I think it was 2017 or 2018, I can't remember which. This was one of the first studios that I was able to find my feet at. But by that stage, I'd already kind of started establishing myself as one of these like industry leader type people of teaching seminars and winning awards and judging competitions and things like that. So I think I was on the owner's radar. It was a tattoo studio on Melrose Avenue called Black Anchor Tattoo. It's run by a tattoo artist called Nico Attardo. In our world, he's like one of the probably one of the top 10 well-known tattoo artists. So when I was offered that position, it was bliss. And we actually locked in that position by an interview that was come down to the studio and paint with me together for a day, and if we vibe together, then I'll offer you the position. And so I was quickly like, oh crap, like I have to scramble and run to the paint shop and grab a bunch of supplies and look professional, look like I know what I'm doing when I get there. And I sort of half started a painting so that it looked more impressive that I could just finish it with him on the day. But it was great. We just sat for 5, 6 hours and painted together, and he was working on his thing, I was working on mine. We were just chit chatting away like this. And at the end of it, he was like, well, yeah, come out and work for the studio. I think you're a good fit.
Vibe is so important. I remember a former boss saying, I love to meet with everyone that I hire personally outside of the interview process because it's a lot of money to hire someone. There's so much training and time and everything that's involved, and then you're going to be spending a lot of time with them, and you want the best results. And she said, if I can't imagine traveling with this person or having a beer with this person or having a meal with this person, then they're not going to be a good fit because I want to be able to treat them just like I would anyone else,
Of
like
course.
on a friendly level. So it sounds like you had that same rapport. The reason I asked that is I'm just trying to like, put together your timeline. So the painting and the art came before the internship and came before, the
No,
tattoo career.
in 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 its most basic form, yeah. But
Mm.
the musicianship first, enjoyed my life with that side of stuff. Was doing a lot of merch designing for different bands, like we mentioned a second ago, and that led into other people asking me, "Hey, I would really, really love to get some of these as actual tattoo designs. Can you draw me something up and I'm going to take it to this other artist?" And I remember coming back and seeing the pictures that this other artist had translated and thinking, it's good, but I wish I could have been the one to do it, because that translation kind of got lost a little bit there, and they went off and did
Mhm.
their own thing. So it bothered me that I wasn't the one to do it. So I said to my band, and I was super broke at the time. I said to them, if you want to buy me the stuff from Amazon, I'm pretty sure I can work this out. I can work out how to do this. So we started off with just little tribal-y sort of band logos. I think we did like a couple of our own little logos on each other, and we did a couple of little tour tattoos, just really simple American traditional stuff that I thought I could handle. And then after they started floating around a while, I got more and more interest and more people saying, "Oh, you're doing this now." And then managed to stumble my way into an apprenticeship in my local town, which was okay, but I think I learned the most once I'd built up my skills and was able to break out into the world and start picking up little nuggets of information from here and there and this country and whatever. So by the time I got over to California, I'd already been traveling for almost a decade. Almost, I remember 2 years where all I did was live in hotels. I didn't have a house. I didn't renew my lease. I literally just pushed through as much of this evidence building in a short window that I possibly could because I knew where I wanted to end up, and that was hopefully LA.
Amazing. Um, I don't want to go into all of the tattoo, background because there's so much of it, and I'm sure that you've talked about it ad nauseum with many other interviewers.
What you mean?
But
No. Yeah.
what do you mean? But like, what's your favorite part about being a tattoo artist? Is it the creativity? Is it the connection with the individual? Is it a combination of things? What is it for you?
It's 100% of a combo. I've got like kind of a jokey answer that I usually tell people, but the the real reason is I get to create a one of one product, never replicated, and held with that person for the rest of time, for the rest of their lives. Like illustrating vessels for a living is one of the most obscure, crazy jobs that really shouldn't exist. But in this reality, in this universe, somebody has decided, oh, that's the way physics works, and you can totally just do that. So it's not shamanistic. Like I don't see it like that, but I do see it as people are paying me to create for them an
Mhm.
illustration that tells a story that they can carry with them for the rest of their lives. Almost like a little religious relic that people might have traveled with their whole lives back in the 1600s, whatever. This is now on their skin and a reminder of an event, a reminder of a story, something that I can give them of value that they'll never buy again and they'll never have to wear it out, or it just remains with them. And there's something fascinating to me about the trust that somebody wants to bestow on me to illustrate their vessel for all of time. It's crazy. It's the biggest honor I could ever be gifted by another human being is I want what you do on me forever. And the
Yeah.
joke is I'm left-handed, and as soon as I noticed that it didn't smudge, I was like, "Oh fuck, this is where we're at now." Like, oh my god, I'm not smudging this all the way through. For a lefty, let me tell you, that is absolute paramount.
That's hilarious. Let me ask your perspective on something. So I have, I don't know, I shouldn't say half a dozen plus tattoos, all various sizes. I typically go for much smaller stuff, like really tight line work. Um, there's an artist in Toronto, Nick Apollon, who I love. He's incredible. Shout out to Nick. Um, I've worked with other artists who I don't know if it's fear or control, where they won't give you a design beforehand. They want to kind of like do a day of, and then you start to do the tattoo. But I'm
Hmm.
the kind of person who wants that like on my body. I want to find the placement. I want to make sure that it's specific to the artwork that I'm building on my body. So I need it beforehand. Um, where are you in that vibe, and why would someone not, wanna give the art out ahead of time versus do it day of on the spot?
So I think there's two differences to the type of two artists that there are. There are people that won't prep anything. When you arrive, they're prepping it in front of you. They've not Googled anything, they've not searched anything, they've not saved any images, they've not drawn from their own creativity to prepare that in advance. They're waiting for you to get there. And for lack of a better, like that's how some people flow. But if I ever did that, I would feel like I'm discrediting my customer because they paid for my time. And part of the reason we're so well paid is it's a all encompassing job. The timeline is you go home and you prepare your work. The reason I won't send things out in advance anymore is I've learned my lesson of if somebody trusts my work and they trust my process, by sending out a design in advance, one of two things will happen is they'll take the design and say, well, that was worth um, losing my deposit over. I'm going to take this to the cheap guy down the street now that all the hard work is done. Cool, I'll just bounce.
Hmm.
Like, and they no show me, and that ends up in a loss of work for that day. Or they share it with their friends and family who they haven't explained the vision to, who aren't tattoo people. And what comes back in that email thread is, do you think we could add a date at the bottom? And do you think we could add a name? And I showed it to my partner, and they decided it would look better if you did it like this. And
That's
so
fair.
now getting further and further away from them wanting one of my pieces and more into, oh, you just want somebody that's good at copying an image translated onto you rather than an original piece of artwork. So that for me is the reason I don't
Mm.
send stuff out. If I really need to work with somebody that needs to see it, like yourself beforehand, I'll book them a consultation and they can come into the studio and view the design and I can make notes and little changes. But if it's not a one-on-one thing where I'm talking to you directly about what we're going to do, there are you're going to end up with a collage of other people's ideas slammed together rather than a professional tattoo, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So let me give you an example from my personal life. Like I went to a tattoo artist a couple years ago, and I wanted to get I have a really cool painting from a former neighbor, and I said, I want to take this painting and turn it into a tattoo on the back of my triceps.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to put your own flair. He did a bunch of like sacred geometry, some really cool stuff. I said, I want you to take this and kind of put your own flair on it, but he wouldn't let me see the design beforehand. Fine, that's your process. I respect that. That's your creative flow. I had the tattoo done. He like, let me have revisions and all this stuff. But because of the time crunch and how you're there for a certain amount of time, I didn't really get to pay attention to it. I didn't really get to see it. And,
Yeah.
it wasn't until it was done, I came home and I started to review it. I was like, oh man, like the beak is like a little too big and like it looks more like a seagull than an eagle. And these are nuances that I would have caught before. What do you do in that instance? Like as a person who's trying to get the tattoo versus give the tattoo?
I would say in those instances, you have to work with the person that has come to you for the art piece. So patience is such a good trait of a tattoo artist. If you feel like you mention something to somebody and they get a bit huffy about changing their vision into your vision or whatever, it's they might not be the person for you. They might not be the correct artist. And I know that like at
Mhm.
that stage, a lot of money has already changed hands, and not a lot of people want to walk away from that type of deposit that's been dropped or whatever. But if you don't work with the person that's paying, it's a little bit like you're being commissioned, like you can't just say, oh, it's my way or the highway to your customer. But if that happened to me in that particular instance, we'd sit on the couch and we'd revise. And this happens quite a lot that I'll design a whole back or a whole sleeve for somebody. And there's gonna be elements in this sleeve where they go, well, I really like the whole thing, but this one little bit, can we change this? No problem. We'll sit there for a couple of hours. We'll change it. We'll make sure it's 100% because I'm going to spend 80 to 100 hours with this person. So if the rapport isn't there and we're not vibing, we might as well just not start the project. I refund their deposit because I want them to be so proud of what we achieve at the end of it that it really does like change their life and they just grow in confidence after adding it to their body.
It sounds like it's the same thing we were talking about earlier, where you want to sit down with the person and have that vibe and the rapport. And it doesn't mean that like just because this person does things differently that it's wrong. It just might not be the fit for you, and that's okay. So I mean, that's something I haven't really considered before as someone who's not deep in your industry is like, oh yeah, like you can always say no. A tattoo artist can maybe just not be a fit. Then you just have to go and be patient and pivot and find someone else.
The worst thing about that is we are all artists and creatives, and we all live in this
Yeah.
slightly ADHD antisocial bubble. So not all of us have great translation skills to be able to say what we really mean in a delicate way to a customer. And that ends up with some artists seeming rude or standoffish or just aggressive in their approach or whatever. It's just because we're doodling all day, every day, like with one-on-one customers. It's we don't have the greatest of people skills as an industry, I think.
Which is fascinating because you guys are almost like, the digital's wrong. You're almost like I was trying to find an adjective, but you're almost like a bartender, like the barkeep when you go and you tell them your life story and they hear everyone vent.
I couldn't agree more. The thing with that is that I was going to use the word despise, but that's too harsh of a word. But what I really mean is that I discourage is people saying, "Oh, I can't wait for my tattoo therapy." Because in my opinion, do you really want to take the advice of a skin doodler? Like you think that we're the ones to come to ask life advice for? Like we're going to give you the worst advice, and it's all going to turn into chaos for you. So we're good at listening, but if you say, "What do I think you should do?" my response is going to be, "Yeah, travel the world, sell all your stuff, become a world traveler." Like, what can I say to them? That's just my experience.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong though. Ironically, I think that part of the problem with mindset and therapy and all this stuff is that people just have a hard time expressing themselves. You just said
Yeah,
people have a hard time talking. So if you are creating a safe space where people feel like opening up and venting or sharing, that
absolutely.
doesn't mean it needs a response. All it needs to
Yeah.
do is come out.
hmm The only issue I've ever had with that, and I love people sharing with me. It's so nice to feel like they love the environment that much. But the only issue I've ever had with that is if people have been through a very traumatic experience and they know that you are an impartial party that they can vent to, a whole week of that, and you do go home feeling extremely heavy. It's like we're not
Mm,
licensed therapists, and we're not supposed to have taken on that much weight throughout our jobs. Kind of, I think the same as a paramedic. It's like, yes, you're giving back and you're giving the world like opportunities and chances, and you're doing such an amazing job, but the trauma that can come with that from listening to other people's vent and experience can sometimes be really, really jarring. And it's another reason why some artists choose to wear headphones, because if they've had one or two too many customers that have really left an impact on them and a scar on them, they might want to hermit away for a little bit and try and focus on creating the best piece of art on that customer that they can. Doesn't mean they're rude, just means that they are less equipped to process that much
uh,
traumatic information in their own lives, or they're not in a good place to be able to hear that from their customer, that they want to be able to control the scene a little bit better.
that's fascinating. I mean, I can imagine that, especially for longer pieces when you're doing sessions in the hours rather than in the minutes, taking a break to be focused on the actual artwork by having music on makes complete sense. What are some of the tools? Because I don't think this is a tattoo specific thing. This is actually a really cool conversation about, tools in general. What are some of the tools that you employ to help with that heaviness? Like, do you try to block some of it or do you try to take it and then turn it into something positive? What does Owen Paulls do?
I think I learned that the best way to act is mirroring of my client's energy. So if they come in and they've brought headphones and they want to settle into a movie, I'm like, okay, cool. That allows me to do that. You've made a choice that you want it. That's your focus zone. That's how you receive your like pain threshold the best. Cool. You do that. Other
Mhm.
customers really want to chat all day, and that's fine too. And the time just flies by, and all of a sudden 10 hours is over and they're leaving with their tattoo. And then some people are in the middle. And I think for the longest time in my early career, I was trying to tell the customers, this is how I work the best, and you have to fit to my mold. But now, after 10, 15 years, it's far better, and I retain far more customers and positive reviews of my work by mirroring their attitude and deciding what they want. And also writing little notes. I have little notes in my diary about each customer. So if my customer got a little bit cold, I know next time, okay, well, here's a little blanket. Or I'll bump up the heating for you, and I'll know before you get there that I can make this like a comfortable environment for you. Or if somebody's very headphoney, I know, okay, well, they're not going to mind if other music is on in the background for the next session, and I don't have to ask them each time, and it can feel a little bit more fluid.
Mm. I love that last detail. You reminded me of something that I took from my career. So I worked for a year as a corporate event planner. I'm not going to name the company because I had a horrible experience there. But one of the higher ups at one point came in, and this stuck with me. It was the smallest thing, and ironically, it's the smallest thing, and it's about the smallest thing. She said that when you're creating brand experiences, that you have to focus on the minutia. That's what sets apart greatness from great, or good
Mm,
rather. Sorry, greatness from good. And she used an example of going to a hotel, and she said, "I was in this hotel, and I had, like, it was a nice hotel, and there was a fruit bowl, and what they noticed immediately was that the apples, I had, like, red apples, green apples, oranges. I was just eating the green apples, and
mm,
then within a couple of days, the next time I came home, the bowl was just green apples."
wow,
And
yeah.
they noticed that
Mm,
deal, and they switched. I mean, it's such a small thing, but it stuck with me about how to really cater to someone, and it
yeah.
sounds like you're doing that as well with your clients.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the amount of, in a similar way, the amount of phone chargers I've amassed over this last 15 years that people have left behind, I now have like specific, I know whose phone charger is what. And when they come in, I go, "You forgot your charger? That's cool because this is actually yours. I've had it for a year. Please take it back." But just, yeah, I completely agree that the little things are what they remember and they take away from it. So I've seen people where the quality of work might not be as strong as this world famous other award winning work, but they've got the clients. They've retained the clientele and they're the ones that are busy in tattooing because they give a fuck. They give a shit about listening and caring for, and that customer feels so well taken care of that they're not going to go anywhere else because what, how would they get that experience at a secondary place?
Amazing. I wanna wrap up by going back to the beginning and referencing something that you said about, like, intention and manifesting,
Yeah.
but first, I wouldn't be a dad if I didn't say, "You've got all these chargers," and immediately my marketing idea brain went to,
Ah,
"You should do some kind of series," whether it's a painting series or a sketch series or even
mhm.
just images on IG called, like, "No charge," and it's just the
Ah,
random charges that have been left behind.
yeah, no, I love that. I'm already getting visions of like a slightly worn frayed cord under a subway seat in a black and white high contrast photograph. Yeah. Um, a charger strewn on a busy high street with one prong missing. It can never be plugged in again. Yeah.
Just leverage all the chargers that are left there.
Yeah, I'll totally make an art
The
of that. Whether I'm going to be the one to paint 2,000 chords is another thing, but I have a camera, so we can maybe put it that route instead.
Amen. Owen, you've been awesome. I really appreciate the conversation. Um, before we wrap up, you
Mm,
started by saying, like, when you moved into this place that you had, like, written down notes and you're like, "It's gonna go great and you're gonna get this." That's such an awesome thing. Not everyone does it. I do it sometimes, manifesting intention.
mhm.
Is that something that you do regularly? Talk to me about that practice, how it started for you. Like, I'm fascinated by it.
I can't remember what gave. There must have been something that I watched or something that I tuned into to say, "Hey, why don't you try this?" But every single thing that I've got in my life that I thought was completely unachievable has come from writing a little note about what I want, how I'm going to get it, and when I'm going to get it by. And also telling other people and sharing that idea with others that are my intentions. I really do believe that the more energy you have in other people's minds and the more space you take up in other people's minds of this is where I'm going, you encourage that
Uh,
universe to be created and that you can just walk into it. So if you can vision it in your mind's eye and get a bunch of other people to also envision it in their mind's eye, who's not to say that that universe gets created just by the human thought experience? Like, we are just these vessels peeking through different frequencies and different whatevers on this planet. And it's not illogical to me to really believe that we can create different spaces that we want to walk into. So all the band stuff, writing it down. All the moving to America stuff, I wrote it down at an early age. All the moving to the studio stuff, wrote it down. And certainly now that I'm starting to play a little bit more music again, I still reset my 5, 10, 15-year goals. And each step of those, I make sure that I can envision the exact experiences that I want to walk into. And without being cocky, like 90% of the time, it ends up happening and actually resolving itself. And I think to myself, that is exactly how I thought it was going to go. And it's right there. So yeah, just the power of thought and manifestation. I wish the rest of the world had the confidence to really envision that, or the imagination, I suppose.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the chat. Yeah, I'm grateful for the time that you've afforded me, some of the stories and the lessons. I think that the main theme here for both of us is you just got to take chances, you got to take risks, you got to keep going. And then whatever life gives you, you got to pivot. I really always love to end by passing the mic over to my guest for, the final word. So why don't
Yeah.
you wrap us up and then we'll go home.
Based on the previous section of this chat, which has been wonderful, by the way. What a nice thing to do with my day off. This has been absolutely amazing. I would say that the thing that's carried me the furthest in life that I wish other people could put into practice, and that I certainly try and practice, is there aren't bad experiences, and oh, that's being a little bit facetious, but there aren't any experiences in life that you can't flip some form of positivity out of. Even at my worst, I've been able to say, okay, what lesson am I able to take away from this? And how can I turn this into something that grows me as a human being rather than hinders me and stunts me? And it might take years to come fully around to that. But I really think by creating more positive neural networks in your brain, you can reroute your brain into only seeing the positive in this world and staying well away from the negative. And I think that without being too one way or the other about it, I do think that the modern world that we live in is very geared towards don't let people find this out. Don't let people work out that they can live the happiness route. Keep them in this little bubble of fear because that makes us a little bit more money, or that makes life easier to write laws or rules or whatever. But in my experience, in my life, I just wish that everybody could look at any experience that they have and turn it into a positive from a negative.